Hello, how are you today, Andy?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I'm Kelly, for anyone that hasn't met me before, and we are here today to talk about Rev Pro Uprising 2022. So this is our fourth York Hall of the year, our final big show. How are you feeling going into it, Andy?
Excited for it to be over. That's just the standard answer. It's There's so much stress and pressure and so many different curveballs and different things to organize in the lead up to any professional wrestling show. And the York Hall shows always seem to bring on that extra bit of headache, but it's ultimately always worth it because we've got a great card lined up. And as always, the guys and girls of Revolution Pro Wrestling are gonna deliver. Like it's not even a if all the cards align, I know they're going to deliver. Yeah, I'm excited.
Absolutely. Well, York Hall is always the fans' favourite. It's always the ones that the most people travel out for. And this card is no different. Like you said, it's an absolutely stacked card. We've got every single title on the line. We've got dream matches. We've got big feuds going into it. It's kind of a big blow off at the end of the year. It's kind of like the fireworks before the fireworks, really.
Yeah, and I mean anyone who's been to our shows recently, particularly the live in London show this past weekend, will know that it's almost I kept calling it like fight season. It's almost like everyone is the testosterone going on around the locker rooms that bit more, the energy, the intensity, and everyone's set to peak on December 17th. There's a lot of combustible situations that I'm sure we'll get into, but yeah, people do circle those York Hall dates, those big York Hall fight nights on their calendar, and there's every reason to. And that's not discounting any of the other shows that we produce across the year, but like you say, there's something quite magical about York Hall. It's one of the world's, and again, it's not hyperbole when I say this, it's one of the world's most famous combat sports venues. And it's been a privilege to add professional wrestling to the list of combat sports that have had iconic moments before those walls. I'm sure those walls could tell some stories if they could talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go straight into the card then. We talk about combustible situations. I think a great place to start is with our undisputed British Tag Team Championship match. So we've got the champions, Greedy Souls, going up against the Sunshine Machine in a street fight. So this was announced at the 229 that we've just had. We had we thought a no count out would be enough to kind of control what was going on. But yet again, the Greedy Souls had done what they do and sort of wrapped around it, got themselves counted out, and at the detriment of Sunshine Machine again. So, a street fight, Andy. What are we expecting?
Well, as you said, I think the first thing we're expecting a conclusive finish to the match after the previous two encounters. We saw that count out, we saw the disqualification. I think that many people, again, you look at the match which ended via count out, it looked like Greedy Souls took a walk, and they did take a walk, but I think it's an interesting series to analyze. The first contest between the pair, you saw Greedy Souls really overwhelm Sunshine Machine. They had an answer for everything Sunshine Machine tried to throw at them. They rushed them from the onset of the contest, and I think that was their route to victory, because Sunshine Machine weren't expecting it. Perhaps taking Greedy Souls, a team they'd faced before in the past for numerous promotions, including Rev Pro, perhaps taking that contest, that victory for granted, dare I say. But what Greedy Souls were able to do in that first contest, if we're going to break it down, is they were able to never have a situation where it was 2-on-2. It was always 2-on-1. So, Sunshine Machine are tag team specialists, but they weren't really able to get out the starting blocks on that occasion. And that was the key to Greedy Soul's success and the key to them shocking the wrestling world, really, when they became the undisputed British tag team champions. And we move on to 2 weeks later. Sunshine Machine, they wanted to get a rematch. They wanted to get at the earliest possible opportunity. They figured they'd figured out the question of the Greedy Souls. And the Greedy Souls, again, they went with what was successful for them. They tried to rush them from the start of the contest, but this time it was Sunshine Machine who had the answers. And I think that really put Greedy Souls on a back foot, and it took them on a back foot all the way out the 229, which laid the landscape, laid the foundation for this no count out match this past weekend, which resulted in a disqualification. But would I say it was a disqualification that the Greedy Souls got deliberately to try and back out of the contest? I think my answer would be no on that one. And I think the reason is because you heard the statement from the Greedy Souls. They're talking about wanting to be taken seriously, not wanting to be seen as paper champions, not wanting to be seen as a holding place for Sunshine Machine to recapture their tag team championship goals. And I think in their mind, the assault on Sunshine Machine at the end of the contest sent a message. It sent a message saying, we're not scared of you, and we will show that by challenging you to a street fight at York Hall Bethnal Green. So you can forget about countouts, you can forget about disqualifications. It's going to be physical, it's going to be nasty. And Greedy Souls this past weekend made it about more than business. They made it personal.
It was definitely one of the most sort of disgusting displays I'd seen from them. I think we'd been laughing, we'd been like, oh, those Greedy Souls sort of up until that point. But that was the moment I was like, these guys have switched. There's something in their head where they're like, I need to prove this to everyone now. And saying that, so Greedy Souls have sort of been the upper hand this whole way through. However, they haven't had the big match at York Hall yet. And although it is only a venue, it is the venue, and it's something that Sunshine Machine have had experience at. Do you think the sort of the grand stage, the big lights, do you think that will affect Greedy Souls in any way?
Well, let's not forget this run for the Greedy Souls really started at York Hall, and they're able to defeat Destination Everywhere. But you are right in the respect that they haven't had that contest with the high stakes of the British Tag Team Championships being one of the feature matches. And again, perhaps you could look at it and say, add an asterisk next to that victory as well, because of course that all came about as a result of Connor Mills turning his back on his longtime tag team partner, best friend, Michael Oku, which again leads us to Uprising, and very much a road to Uprising was put in motion at the 10-year anniversary weekend if we look back. And yeah, so there was an asterisk next to their victory there. I mean, they acted like they won the World Cup.
Yes.
Which we know isn't very possible for Wales, but I
No.
can myself. But they really have that high pressure situation in terms of they have something to prove. They really do. And even though they walk in as the undisputed British Tag Team Champions, I think they walk in the underdogs. And I think that is a wrong that they want to right. Will the pressure of that be too much for them? We wait and see. But as you say, Sunshine Machine, they've been in similar positions to what the Greedy Souls are in going into this contest. I look at their match as against Aussie Open as one of the most defining contests they've ever had. They picked up the win against Aussie Open before, but not at York Hall. And when they had that match at York Hall, and not with the Tag Team Championships on the line, when they had that match at York Hall with the Tag Team Championships on the line, it was really a coming of age moment for Sunshine Machine. So it's going to be interesting to see if this, York Hall show will be a coming of age moment for the Greedy Souls, or whether Sunshine Machine will be able to pick that ball up and start running with it again.
I think absolutely it'll be a defining factor of where this sort of tag team division goes into the new year. We've got a few tag teams out at the moment, a few that will be coming back in. So it'll be very interesting to see who starts the new year with those belts, I think. Going on to the next one, we spoke about fight season coming up. And this past Sunday, we saw what I would say would be, if you had the dictionary definition of a fight put down, we had Knight versus Knight. We had Ricky Knight Jr., our undisputed British heavyweight champion, going up against his uncle, Zack Knight. It was a few weeks coming. There's a few, hurdles in the way, but eventually we got there. And my God, was it a fight? Literally from the word go, it's the most sort of bare knuckle kind of just intense fight. I can't use a better word than fight, thing I had seen in RevPro. And this match finish, Ricky did get the win, but we were saying the whole time on commentary, it was going either way. It was at any point, it was like, which man will get the 3 count? And it didn't even happen in the end. We kind of called it. We were like, neither of these men are gonna, lie down for each other. But eventually Zack Knight did pass out. It did get called off, which then led to Ricky starting a speech about how things had gone. And Zack was kind of standing watching this and just sort of taking it all in. No one really knew what he was going to say until he stole that mic from Ricky and basically said, I need to step up to your level. I need to step up to your level, RKJ. And then called out Tomohiro Ishii. I mean, Can you get a bigger call out than that, Andy?
Well, it was certainly a statement from Zack Knight, wasn't it? And in my mind, it was a sign of perhaps a turning point in Zack Knight's career. I mean, it's been well documented that Zack Knight has got a famous sister. He's a part of the famous Fighting Knight family from Norwich, was featured in Fighting with My Family, you know, the movie by The Rock. You know, he's a high profile wrestler, but the nature of him being high profile is almost the spotlight being put on his pitfalls, his losses, so to speak. Going to America, conquering the international wrestling stage was always Zack Knight's dream, not Soraya's dream, Zack Knight's dream. And Saraya just did it so she had something in common with her brother, you know, and she caught the wrestling bug, as many of us do, you know, but it was Zack's dream all the time, you know, and where Zack failed, Saraya ascended, and Zack took that badly, and it was a bad setback for him. He's had countless injuries over his career as well, and many of it from starting so young in the wrestling business. You know, before his body had fully developed, he was taking bumps, and as a result, that's given him some setbacks as well. He's never responded to those setbacks very well. And some of the high-profile losses he's had in his career, he's not responded to very well. And we saw that in flip contrast to the way his nephew, his younger nephew, a man he had a hand in training, Ricky Knight Jr., who I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about later on. But, you know, Ricky Knight Jr. is a man who's had high-profile losses, but we've seen Ricky Knight Jr. in Rev Pro pick himself up, learn from those losses, and go on to achieve great success. That's something that Zack Knight's not been able to do thus far. There's no doubting his ability. There's no doubting his potential. Look at the size, you know, look at the skill set, look at how long he's been doing this, look at the people he's able to hang with inside of a professional wrestling ring. There's not many men tougher than Zack Knight. But every time he has that setback, he literally falls back instead of learning a lesson. We talk about win or learn for wrestlers across the Revolution Pro Wrestling roster. I've used that term over and over again, but for Zack Knight, it was always win or lose. But this past Sunday, when he lost to Ricky Knight Jr., he didn't lose, he learned. And he learned that Ricky Knight Jr., who I think in the back of Zack's head, he was like, come on, man, I can take my nephew. You know, I've done it in the gym. You know, I taught him everything he knows. I felt his toughest strikes, you know, and I think in the back of Zack's mind, he thought he had the match won, and he thought he was going to prove a statement on Sunday. And then obviously when he didn't, instead of sulking about it, instead of kicking up a fuss, you know, we saw the frustration after he lost to Shota Umino. But this was a different Zack Knight. It's a Zack Knight who has seemed to have got some perspective since joining the Revolution Pro Wrestling roster. And he's looked at it, he's assessed the situation. He said, look, the reason why Ricky surpassed me, because he has, I'm going to be honest, he surpassed me. At this stage, he's surpassed me. And the proof is in the pudding that he's the undisputed British heavyweight champion. But I believe the reason this has happened is because over the past couple of years since Ricky Knight Jr. has been in Revolution Pro Wrestling, he's tested himself, he's competed against and defeated some of the best wrestlers on the planet. And the only way you can get better is by competing against the absolute best. And when you talk about the best, you need look no further than the Stone Pitbull Tomohiro Ishii, who's a former undisputed British heavyweight champion himself, and is responsible for some of the hardest hitting matches in Revolution Pro Wrestling. And I think this match against Zack Knight on December 17th is absolutely going to be no different when we talk about a hard-hitting war. It's a real opportunity for Zack Knight to step up, be counted, but at the same time, Tomohiro Ishii isn't flying all the way from Japan to, you know, to back down to Zack Knight. Reputations mean nothing to Ishii. The reputation of the Knight family means nothing to him. And yeah, it's going to be an absolute war.
100%. I think so. I think that's a really good point you made there about Zack Knight as well. He kind of got brought in halfway through the year. He got brought in as a sub almost. It was almost like, oh, someone can't do this show, we'll put Zack Knight in. Someone can't, you know, it kind of did feel that way. And I think he kind of got a bit of chip on his shoulder early on to sort of, he didn't just want to be Ricky's replacement or I'll fill in the gap here. He wanted to make that name, live up to that sort of prize fighter status, which is why he went after, you know, the British heavyweight champion. It makes sense. But I do think there was, like we saw, a humbling in that match to where he went, actually, I can be here. I can go up against the best, but I need to work there. I need to prove that I can go one-on-one in a match that was made for me, that I set out to sort of go forward. And I think by ending this year, taking on Ishii is the perfect thing for Zack Knight to then build the foundations to get the respect from his peers and the crowd and everybody involved going into next year.
Absolutely, it could well be, and it's crazy to say this, that because of the longevity that Zack Knight's had in this business, but this could be the coming out party for Zack Knight. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if come the end of the night, the name that is on everyone's lips is the Zodiac Zack Knight. You know, I genuinely believe he's got the potential and ability to make those headlines. I think that he believes it now more so than ever. And I think that he is going to be, these next couple of weeks, he's going to be training diligently in the gym. He's going to be preparing for Ishii. He's going to be studying tape. And I think he's going to present the best version of himself come December 17th.
It really does feel that way. So we're talking about making an impact, making a statement. Let's move on to our undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship. So this is now a triple threat match. So we've got our champion, Luke Jacobs, who defeated the longest reigning, the arguably greatest Cruiserweight champion of all time, Michael Oku, back in Manchester, going up against Robbie X, our British J Cup winner, who many had seen as underrated, didn't quite get the chance to, you know, reach the heights they thought he could, now finally getting his big York Hall moment. And then going up against Will Caven. So 6 months ago, maybe even 4 months ago, this wouldn't have meant really anything to anyone. But now seeing these three names together, as we have for the past few shows, I think this match now makes absolutely perfect sense. And Will Caven's kind of made it that way. He's kind of got involved in everybody's business, got those wins to the point where it's undeniable that he now is in contention for this British Cruiserweight Championship. Three very different men here with three very different relationships each, but I don't even know where to begin with this situation, Andy, honestly.
Yeah, either do I. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, traditionally, the winner of the British J Cup goes on to challenge for the undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship. Winner of British J Cup, of course, was Robbie X, and he's got his date with destiny, so to speak. However, Will Caven has forced himself into the equation. He's somewhat of a disruptor. You know, if you look at, I guess, successful businesses in this world, they're businesses which have come and disrupted the marketplace. And that's certainly what Will Caven's done since entering into Revolution Pro Wrestling, disrupted the marketplace. He holds victories over Robbie X. One of them being a count-out victory, but he doesn't care. You know, a win's a win. He's got 2 pinfalls now over the Cruiserweight champion Luke Jacobs, and quite frankly, he's managed to rub these guys up the wrong way. And let's not forget the victories, 2 victories over the former longest reigning and most defending Cruiserweight champion of all time in Michael Oku. Will Caven's got credentials, let's make no mistake about it, right? But he's kind of got himself into a situation where he's really got so much into the mindset and psyche of Luke Jacobs and Robbie X that he's almost been welcomed into this contest by both men, because they now both feel that they've got a point to prove to him as well as anything else, which I think is a testament to the way he's gone and done his business, right? He's not a fly by night. He's someone who's been training at the Portsmouth School of Wrestling for some time now. He was someone who could have become one of our contenders a year or so ago, or a couple of years ago, but he opted not to be a contender because he wanted to be his own person. And it looks like right now he's made that right decision. He's gone in the deep end and he's swimming right now. But again, like you say, it's an unorthodox, an unusual scenario going in that into this triple threat match. And it's one where the momentum seems to not be with the number 1 contender, Robbie X, or the champion, Luke Jacobs. It seems to be with Will Caven, who's just riding this wave at the moment. And you have to ask the question, is Luke Jacobs, is his mind entirely on the contest? I mean, he's got this thing going on in the background with Dan Maloney. We saw them come to blows. We saw him have very choice words for Driller at the 229. I'll put it politely. He told him he's not invited to the party on December 17th. That's the nicest way I can say it. But I think Luke Jacobs, sorry, is really finding that life as champion is quite lonely. Everyone's gunning for you. He's got a target on his back, and whilst there may be respect between Robbie X and Luke Jacobs, there's absolutely no love lost whatsoever. It's really got all the ingredients of a combustible situation, something that's very, very exciting. And I think that, again, because stylistically all three men are so different, that's gonna put us in a situation to create fireworks and a bit of a spectacle. I think the fact that it's being fought under elimination rules has to favour the champion a little bit more, because often in these triple threat matches, it's just one fall to a finish, the champion loses his champion's advantage. But where we're at, obviously there's going to be no disqualifications in the match, but where we're at, if Luke Jacobs is going to lose his grasp on that cruiserweight championship, he's going to have to be beaten one way or the other. So that's why there's pros and cons, I guess. There's more routes to victory, but I guess the main pro about the whole thing is there's going to be no more questions after December 17th. There's going to be no more questions about who the true cruiserweight champion is, who the top guy in the division is. It's impossible to predict, and it's going to be impossible to call, I'm sure, because there's going to be action from left, right, in the middle, all over the place.
Absolutely. Well, we saw it this past Sunday. Luke and Robbie can coexist to a point. So there might be some tactics there. They've sort of been around a little bit longer than Will. They might just want to get that sort of unpredictability out. But we have seen Will touch gold almost. He did pin Luke Jacobs and nearly got declared the undisputed British Cruiserweight champion until Robbie X came out and went, actually, no. We called the VAR, called it. Absolutely was not the case. And again, that's not a side we've seen from Robbie as much. He's never been the sort of vocal, interfering in everyone else's business. He's very much been narrow. And I feel like Will is kind of calling everyone's bluff at this point. Like we spoke about Luke Jacobs being lonely. He had great success with his tag team partner, Ethan Allen and the Young Guns. He was a tag team wrestler for so long. He's finally found his footing. And this has been the first real big, challenge for him as champion. And I feel like Will's kind of calling out both of these men to sort of change how they go into things. So it might be a good tactic, I would say, to get Will out early and then have, a one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? But it's almost like it's about calling the other's bluff, isn't it? Because they can agree that they're going to work together, get rid of the unpredictable one, and then we'll fight it out between the two of us. They can agree to that, but we know that, that because of the spirit of competition, because of the level of competition. Look, if Luke Jacobs sees an opening on Robbie X, if Robbie X has got his back turned to him, will he take it? Absolutely. It's like you say, it's interesting. You say Robbie X not one to get his nose in other people's business. Really, I don't think in Robbie X's mind he was getting his nose in Will Caven's business. I think it was his own business, because he knew he was due a shot at the Cruiserweight Championship. And I think in Robbie X's mind, he'd rather compete for that championship against Luke Jacobs than Will Caven. And I don't think that there's anything dishonorable about that. I just feel that he felt in his mind that Luke Jacobs is a rightful Cruiserweight champion. I think that he feels that Luke Jacobs poses the toughest challenge to him. And I feel that he felt that because of that, if he defeats Luke Jacobs, it will mean more for a potential reign for him. But I'm saying all of this stuff, but all that stuff is disrespecting Will Caven, and that fact isn't lost upon him, and I think that that's why he's such a firecracker. That's why he's so unpredictable, because he's nasty, he's vicious, he's vindictive, and he's going to try and take it out on his opponents.
Absolutely. Well, we could speculate on this match for hours, I think. Honestly, this is going to be a really, really good match to watch out for, but I have no predictions at this point. I think this will just be one where you have to just, December 17th, just tune in, just come and watch and just see for yourself with this one. But going on to young, impactful, new talent, I don't think there's anyone that's made more of an impact in the last couple of months than the youngest in charge, Leon Slater. So we're going into, I would say, dream match territory here, which is very bizarre saying that, bearing in mind, again, you wouldn't have had a clue who this kid was 6 months ago. And now Leon Slater versus Zack Sabre Jr. is the match on everybody's lips. That's the match that everybody is like, this is going to be just insane, sort of just Leon Slater, these past few months, we've seen him. He's grown. He's matured. He gets a standing ovation after every single match without fail. He's an enigma. I honestly haven't seen anything like it since we've spoke about the likes of Pac, we spoke about Will Ospreay, we spoke about these big young people coming in where you can tell they're going to be a star. And Leon finally backed himself to the point where he called out Zack Sabre Jr. He asked for that fight. And Zack's accepted. And we're going to see the once longest reigning British heavyweight champion going one-on-one with youngest in charge, Leon Slater. How are you feeling about this one, Andy?
It's one of the contests I'm most looking forward to because, and again, like you say, he backed himself. Leon Slater backed himself to call out Zack Sabre Jr. And confidence is not something that's lost on Leon Slater. Look, we saw him this past weekend against Michael Oku, a man he looked up to. And you saw Michael Oku making his way to the ring at the 229, and you saw Leon Slater just mimicking that entrance, you know, just the pure confidence of the man. It was just something else. And it's not arrogance, it's confidence, and he backs it up as well. And when we look across the ring to the man that he's challenged, Zack Sabre Jr., you know, you're talking about someone who's, it's not his first rodeo. It's not the first time he's been called out by someone. And Zack Sabre Jr. is a man who relishes competition. He relishes challenges. And Zack Sabre Jr. is going to present perhaps a stylistically most difficult proposition for Leon Slater. They call him a technical wizard for a reason. And I don't think I recall Leon Slater being grounded at any stage in one of his previous encounters. I've seen him get hit hard by the likes of Luke Jacobs, for example, but I've not seen him get grounded in a way that Zack Sabre Jr. is going to ground an opponent. I've not really seen him fight an opponent who's going to smother him in the same way that Zack Sabre Jr. is. Again, he had that pressure put on him by Luke Jacobs, but I think this is different, very, very different to what he's going to get from Zack Sabre Jr. I mean, we know that he's not going to be overawed by the situation because we've spoken about his confidence, his self-belief, etc., and his pure raw ability and potential, and the fact that he really is you know, the most exciting proposition we've seen in a very, very long time. We've seen him go up against the likes of Speedball Mike Bailey, who's, again, he's not got that same raw edge that Zack Sabre Jr.'s got. And of course, this is Zack Sabre Jr.'s first time in a Revolution Pro Wrestling ring since February 2020, the night he lost that undisputed British Heavyweight Championship, a championship he no doubt has his sights set on again, a championship that really, up until, I guess, that reign from Will Ospreay, really, when you spoke about the undisputed British Heavyweight Championship, you know, you just had a picture of Zack Sabre Jr. in mind. You know, he's a man who's synonymous with that championship. You know, he's a man that defended it at Madison Square Garden, won it at the Tokyo Dome, you know, and Zack's got a real history with his company, and he's seen people like Leon Slater come and go, and there's not a chance for a second that he's going to be overawed by the occasion. And this is going to be Leon Slater's biggest test to date. But, you know, many people, myself included, have predicted big, big things for Leon Slater. And if there are going to be big things in the future for him, if his career is going to go in the direction that so many people are predicting, he's going to have to not only test himself against the best, but he's going to have to adapt against different styles. And there's no different than Zack Sabre Jr. And he's going to have to survive, because there's going to be points in this contest where, you know, the Zack Sabre Jr. is going to put the will of Leon Slater to its test. He's really going to, you know, test his willpower, test his resolve, test his grit, test his determination. There's going to be moments in this contest where, you know, Leon Slater will be thinking, should I just give up right now? Because that's what Zack Sabre Jr. does.
I was there the night of that Will Ospreay-Zack match, and Will had to change his tactics. He couldn't do all the high-flying, normal stuff he was used to. And I do wonder if this is Leon's tactic here. He's known now for being energetic, for being high-flying, for all of this. Does he now want to prove to everybody that he is just as good and can do things on the match, can be more technical? Is this him proving it to everybody? He's not just a one-trick pony.
Well, I think if you think about that match with Will Ospreay and Zack Sabre Jr., think how many attempts it took for Will Ospreay to be able to defeat Zack Sabre Jr. and figure out the puzzle of Zack Sabre Jr. You know, and that's coming from Will Ospreay, a man who had, you know, at that stage could well be in the conversation for best wrestler in the world. I think he's at the top of so many people's lists right now. He is the conversation, but at the time he was just in that conversation when he was, you know, going up against Zack Sabre Jr. And I really feel that that victory over Zack at High Stakes 2020, that really was the start of something very, very special for Will Ospreay. And I think very few men have had such a body of work in such a short amount of time that Ospreay had, and I think a lot of that comes down to the confidence and lessons learned in that storied rivalry of Zack Sabre Jr. And that's what Zack Sabre Jr. does. He brings out the best of you. If you don't turn up with your A game, if you don't turn up being the absolute best, he will make your life and night an absolute misery. And you know, like you say, it's going to be interesting to see if Leon Slater can adapt in ways that Will Ospreay was able to adapt. But we can't discount the fact that Slater is so much younger in his career than Will was when Will was having these opportunities. You know, so Will had a lot more experience on his side. But again, Leon Slater is a freak. You know, when I saw Will for the first time, I said, this guy is, I've never seen someone this good, this young, since Pac, you know, and I think that people are now drawing those parallels between Leon Slater and Will Ospreay and in turn Pac. So, you know, it's very high praise, it's very high pressure on the shoulders of Leon Slater, but it's a, you know, it's a real opportunity. And win, lose or draw, I feel that the way that the lessons learned in this contest will mean more than anything else for Leon Slater. But don't get me wrong, we're talking a lot about Leon Slater. Zack Sabre Jr. is coming back to Revolution Pro to make an impact, to make a statement. And like I said, it could be a very, very long night for Leon Slater. Zack Sabre Jr. has the ability to make extraordinary wrestlers look ordinary. I've seen him do it time and time again. I've seen him dominate people. I've seen him bully people in the ring. I've seen him take people by surprise. And, you know, I think he's going to be aiming to do the exact same thing to Leon Slater. I think we could be looking for a statement victory from Zack Sabre Jr. on the 17th.
Absolutely. Well, can't wait for that match. Okay, so going on now to a match that has been a very, very long time coming for various reasons. We have got our undisputed women's unification championship match between our Rev Pro women's champion, Alex Windsor, and the Queen of Southside, Kanji. So this has been a match that we've wanted for a very long time. They've wanted, the crowds wanted, everybody has wanted it. We've had injuries, we've had various reasons that have meant this match hasn't happened. But finally, December 17th, we are getting that unification match to find out who once and for all is the top of the women's division, who will walk out with that undisputed British Women's Championship. How are we feeling about this one, Andy?
Well, I'm excited. I think as far as women's wrestling goes in the United Kingdom, it doesn't get much bigger than Alex Windsor versus Kanji. It's a first-time matchup. It's a matchup which has been scheduled to happen before, but we've seen injuries to both Windsor and Kanji, which have prevented the contest from happening. It seems almost cursed, you know, and I'm touching wood right now because, you know, I feel that it's got all the ingredients of being something very, very special. And I think that, you know, people questioned why we kept the Southside Championship on Kanji, you know, when Kanji went out with her injury. I mean, she's had 2 long layoffs since we merged with Southside. And the reason is really the same reason we brought back the Southside Heavyweight Championship to unify it with the British Heavyweight Championship, is because genuinely, I believe that the lineage that championship holds, you know, it doesn't deserve to go out with a whimper. You know, it should go out with a bang. You know, the winner will be recognised as a unified and undisputed British women's champion. And, you know, the Southside legacy will be a big part of that. And, you know, it's almost impossible to call because both women bring different strengths into the contest. You know, I would say you give the power edge to Alex Windsor, but at the same time, Kanji's got striking ability, which is absolutely second to none. You saw her knock out Mercedes Blaze this past weekend. It was a flash knockout, but she knocked her out nonetheless. And you saw Mercedes Blaze after the contest, couldn't believe what happened to her, No woman, including Alex Windsor, has been able to do that to Mercedes Blaze. So that tells you how much of a real deal that Kanji is. And you can say there was perhaps some shenanigans last month when they were on opposite sides of a tag team contest. But since that point, both women have asked to not be in the same ring as each other at the same time because they want to save it December 17th. So, for example, this weekend, or depending when you're watching it, in Southampton, you're going to have Alex Windsor in the building. Kanji's not going to be there. And is by design. They want this singles contest to be special. They want this singles contest to, be, everything that everyone wants it to be and more. And it's not a contest which is about, again, we've spoken about personal rivalries, we've spoken about animosity, etc. This isn't about any of that stuff. This is about legacy. This is about legacy and legacy alone. And both these women fight for legacy. And they're both very proud women. And both have overcome tremendous hurdles and tremendous obstacles in their careers, and both these women are going to encounter tremendous hurdles and obstacles in this contest alone on the 17th of December. But again, I think it's, if you were to ask me who's going to win, I'd say flip a coin. I don't know how you see this contest.
Well, I think it's an interesting one. So Kanji, like you said, had been out for injury for a while, but she started bubbling away in other promotions, and we kind of saw her big return at Queen of the Ring. Whereas Alex Windsor has been a Rev Pro through and through. She has been the standard bearer of that division. She has been the one for more than a year now, since returning from that injury, since returning from being a mum, everything. She has been the top of this division and the top of the country, I would say. The best unsigned talent is being thrown around constantly, and she backs it up night after night. Rev Pro is her home. Rev Pro is her. And I think she takes almost offense in some ways to the fact that Kanji is still walking around with that Southside belt when she is the Rev Pro Women's Champion. And I think Alex will be coming into York Hall with that chip on her shoulder. And we've seen a grit, we've seen a hard hit from her, but now she's got something to prove. Now it's not just a tag match. Now it's not just, a one-on-one match. It is the championship match where she finally gets the full stop on her legacy, the final pinnacle of her career, that she is the best. I don't think that's lost on Alex Windsor in any way.
Yeah, I think that's perhaps a very interesting point, and something which hasn't been looked at enough is the fact that, like you say, Alex Windsor is the standard bearer. And I'm sure she does take exception to the fact that Kanji is carrying that Southside Women's Championship. As we say, we've got the respect for that promotion, the lineage of that championship, but that's not what Alex Windsor sees. What Alex Windsor sees is a young pretender coming in, so to speak. Alex Windsor's done all the legwork in terms of, think about those high-profile matches we've seen with Alex Windsor. The matches with Giselle Shaw, the match with Kylie Ray, Charlie Evans, just those fantastic encounters that we've seen Alex Windsor in since becoming undisputed British Women's Champion, since returning from an injury that many people said she would never come back from. But that's a type of determination, and I've just got a real sense of admiration for her, the way she goes about her business inside the ring, and the way she's taken herself back up to the top of the pinnacle, and like you say, I would not blame her if there is a sense of resentment towards Kanji, and that underlying sense of resentment. On top, there's respect, no doubt about it. But I do feel that you could forgive her if there was a bit of resentment, and it'd be interesting to see if some of that resentment comes out in the contest at York Hall. And again, when you've got that, and you've got that determination from Windsor, and with Kanji, you've got a sense of self-belief like I've never seen. She believes in herself, and you've only got to talk to her for a few minutes to realize that she manifests things, and then she's seen herself holding both championships aloft. And when you've got someone like that, again, just two stubborn women, really. They're both stubborn, they're both determined, but something has to give, because at the end of the day, there can only be one winner. And at the end of Saturday, December 17th, we will be hearing the words "and new, unified, and undisputed British Women's Champion." But will it be Kanji? Will it be Alex Windsor? At this stage, I'm going to sit on the fence and I'm going to say flip a coin.
I'll join you there. I think I don't want to annoy either woman, but So a bit of a tone shift now, talking about resentment still, but definitely not respect. We have now got former tag team champions, former best friends, Michael Oku going up against Connor Mills. Now, this is a match that has been many, many months in the making, has taken a lot of dark twists and turns, I would say. It has not been a straightforward route. Like you said, it started at the last York Hall against the Greedy Souls when we saw Connor Mills switch, turn on his partner, and many saying, why, Connor, why, for the weeks leading after. And we saw his explanation. He was tired of Michael getting the spotlight. He was tired of just everything being about Michael Oku, and he finally wanted his time. However, we still saw that sort of respect, the moral sort of compass, I guess, in a way, of Michael Oku, where he didn't want to go up against his best friend. That is still his tag team partner. That's still his person he's traveled with for years, and was just like, no, I don't want to fight you. And it took Connor Mills kicking Michael Oku's girlfriend, Amira, flat out to the point where she was passed out on the floor, literally at his wit's end, for Michael to finally turn, to finally show the grit, to finally say, yes, we will have that match. And ever since then, I would say it has been sort of a downward spiral for Michael. Mills has been at him. He's been interfering in matches. We saw it at the 229 this past Sunday. Mills was going one-on-one with their trainer, Eddie Dennis. But earlier in the night, we saw him jump Michael. We keep seeing them jumping each other. It's just got so messy, so much animosity between the two that come York Hall, it's just going to be just an explosion, I think, of emotions.
Yeah, emotional. It's going to be an emotion-driven contest. I don't think that there's ever been anything quite like it in the history of Revolution Pro Wrestling. And look, you say this started off at the previous York Hall show. This has started off a long, long time before then. You know, this started off on day one, February 2020, when Mike Oku invited Connor Mills into Revolution Pro Wrestling. You know, his first match as undisputed British Cruiserweight champion, Michael Oku could pick anyone to defend that championship against, and he selected Connor Mills. He wanted to give a man he'd looked up to. So look, when we talk about the hierarchy here, look, Eddie Dennis trained Connor Mills and Michael Oku, but Eddie Dennis trained Connor Mills first. Michael Oku came second. He looked up at Connor Mills and as a big brother. He looked up at Connor Mills as a mentor. They became best friends. And Michael Oku felt in the back of his mind that Connor Mills was unfairly not given the credit that he deserved. And he wanted, in his first act as undisputed British Cruiserweight champion, he wanted to extend a branch for Connor Mills to step into Revolution Pro Wrestling, to show the wrestling world what he was all about and what he was capable of. And rather than seeing it as something which was a positive, Connor Mills saw the negative. He felt that Michael Oku was almost belittling him, putting him in that situation. He felt that he didn't need Michael Oku's charity. And he felt Michael Oku's kind act was really an act of selfishness to say, hey, look, I'm better than you. I started after you and I'm better. That's the way Connor Mills saw it in his mind. And he kicked Michael Oku in the back of the head at the end of that contest. And then a global pandemic got in the way. And in that time, they reconciled with one another. And then both cited the fact that, look, there's more to this world than bickering. And Mills said himself, it came out of his own mouth, I'm not going to get jealous of other people's successes. But that's exactly what Connor Mills did. And I put it to Connor Mills, and, you know, that I didn't think for 1 second that this wasn't predetermined. He, you know, Connor Mills painted a narrative in front of the people that this is because Michael Oku was selfish. But I believe Connor Mills was biding his time, waiting for this moment. And that really reared its ugly head after he kicked Amira in the head. And you saw the look of concern on the face of Connor Mills, which turned into a grin. How can a man that has knocked anyone out, man or woman, How can a man that's knocked someone out smile about it? You know, especially the fact that, you know, Amira literally got caught in the crossfires. And I'm telling you, what Amira said to Mills, she told him a few home truths, and that's eating away at Connor Mills. And that kind of resentment and anger is something that Mills harbored for Michael Oku. You could see it a long time ago. You could see it, you know, throughout their tag team championship matches. Everyone was expecting Connor Mills to you know, turn on his tag team partner, stab him in the back, show his true colors. But Mills kind of kept his pretense up for long enough that everyone took their guard down. And then when we were least expecting it, bang. And that is why Michael Oku is so emotionally scarred by this thing. That's why Michael Oku is so damaged by this thing. Right at the start, I said to Michael Oku, you look back at those empty arena shows. I know we don't like to think about that horrible time in our lives, but you look back at those empty arena shows. I said to Michael Oku at the time, can you trust this man? And Michael Oku, you know, there's not many people that Michael Oku believes in more than himself, but he seemed to have that belief for Connor Mills, the same belief that led him to opening the door for Connor Mills to come into Revolution Pro Wrestling, the same belief that led him to, you know, accepting the apology, going on to win the Great British Tag League, going on to win the undisputed British Tag Team Championships. You know, that respect that he had for Connor Mills, even though Michael Oku had his own singles career to worry about. But Mills looked at that as a sign of disrespect. Mills looked at that as a sign of Michael Oku being selfish, because in Connor Mills's mind, he should come first every single time. But there's no black and white in this one. Everyone's going to have different sides of the fence that they sit on. We saw Eddie Dennis, his, you know, Mills's and Oku's trainer, getting upset with Michael Oku, getting involved in his business and almost taking his moment away and his spotlight away. And I think you saw it resonate in Michael Oku's eyes that he felt that Eddie Dennis perhaps had a point, the same way he felt that Connor Mills had a point. When Connor Mills turned on him, Michael Oku didn't want to put hands on him, because I think in the back of Michael Oku's mind, he knows, yes, I prioritize my Cruiserweight championship over our tag team championships, over our tag team. Yes, perhaps at times I bit off more than I can chew in defending the Cruiserweight championship and the tag team championships. Perhaps I should have been concentrating on one or another, but I was so hell-bent on making history. I had that drive, I had that determination. I was fighting for legacy. And perhaps along the way, Connor Mills was somewhat of an afterthought. And I think that because of that, Michael Oku wanted to continue to give Connor Mills a benefit of the doubt, even though it was the second time Mills stabbed him in the back, even though Mills was goading him, even though Mills was prodding him with a stick, even though the mental anguish that Connor Mills had created for Michael Oku led him to be on his biggest downward spiral since coming into Revolution Pro Wrestling. You know, Michael Oku still wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. And after that kick, I think the only affirmation that Michael Oku needed that these two aren't friends, that this is never going to be over between the pair of them, was that grin, that smirk on the face of Connor Mills. And it's created such a combustible situation. It's, you know, this one runs deep. And again, I think it's going to be a big, big contrast to the professional wrestling match we saw the two contest with, you know, a few months ago at York Hall, when they were just fighting over the Cruiserweight Championship. And they weren't fighting, they were wrestling one another. But this is going to be a fight. And, you know, I can't predict what way it's going to go. And when I say that, I feel like, look, if Michael Oku can control his emotions, I think he's a favourite in this contest. But I don't know if Michael Oku can control his emotions, because there's so much history in this one.
You've got to wonder, we've seen sort of Mills employ these mental tactics as well as the physical ones. Like you said, he's been nagging in his head. We've seen the doubt over Michael's face where he's now doubting his abilities. And sort of as well as the mental tactics, we've seen Mills kind of shift back to his MMA style as well, a lot more than we had when he was doing the tag stuff. We've seen his feet are coming back out. We've seen the exposed shin. You know, he's working bone to bone now. He does not care about his body. He is just wants to win, wants to just cause as much pain and as much damage. It just seems like a completely unhinged Mills is kind of preying at this point on Michael and Michael's vulnerability. Is there a way that Michael can shut off this emotion at this point? Because I think his emotion might be his downfall. Mills seems to have him at every course at this point.
Yeah, I genuinely don't know the answer to that question. I thought that, so for example, in Sheffield, when he was able to defeat Sean Jackson, Michael Oku said that, look, Mills is out of my mind now. You know, now almost like now Mills has made the action which has definitively said this friendship is over. There's no turning back for these two men now. Now that's happened, Michael Oku can focus and he can move forward, and you know it's not going to play on his mind anymore. And that was all well and good in Sheffield when Connor Mills wasn't in Sheffield. But we saw it 2-2-9, and really it cost Michael Oku that match against Leon Slater. The second that Michael Oku caught a glimpse of Connor Mills, he snapped. And the question is, how do you control that emotion? How do you ride that wave of emotion? We know Michael Oku fights with his heart, and that's been said it's his biggest strength and his biggest weakness. But this is unlike anything we've ever seen before, and I don't know if he can. And you know, if he can channel that anger, he might have a chance.
Well, we saw the fighting with his heart. We kind of saw the parallels between his match back with Ospreay in January. We saw a lot of parallels run deep this past Sunday with that. We saw the towel being thrown in. We saw all these sort of emotional parallels to the point where I'm not sure he has that fight in him anymore. I'm pretty sure it's just the emotion at this point. I'm not sure how he can come back from any of this.
Look, I don't have an answer. I genuinely don't. I feel that this is, again, in people's careers, they have hurdles, they have obstacles they have to overcome, and this is perhaps the biggest one that Michael Oku's had put in his way. And it's not an obstacle he can just push out the way, because Connor Mills is a very, very accomplished professional wrestler, and as you say, he's gone back to those MMA roots. He's an accomplished striker. You know, he's an accomplished grappler. He's got so many strings to his bow. You know, he's a dangerous proposition at the best of times when you're clear-headed, level-headed going into a professional wrestling match. But when you're emotional going into that contest, it makes it even harder. And when you're emotional, you make mistakes. And if there's anyone that's going to take an advantage of a mistake, when someone slips up, it's Connor Mills, and he's not going to hesitate. He's not going to think twice. You know, we saw the beating he laid out on Eddie Dennis, a man who mentored him, a man who looked up to him, or a man he looked up to, sorry. And yeah, there was no backward steps. He was forward motion always, little to no regard for his opponents or indeed his own well-being. And it's a dangerous situation that Michael Oku's walking into.
I think it's going to be an uncomfortable watch, but hopefully we finally get the sort of closure we're after with that situation. Now we are on to our main event. So the undisputed British heavyweight champion, Ricky Knight Jr., is going one-on-one with United Empire and the Legion's Great-O-Khan. With Gideon Gray by his side, we've got an undisputed versus undefeated match for our main event at York Hall. So a bit of history on this one. The Great-O-Khan has had a 2-year-long undefeated streak here in England. He has beaten everybody he has gone up against. Recently, Ricky Knight Jr. at Royal Quest, we've seen him go up against. There's been some big, big wins on there. On the other side of the ring, Ricky Knight Jr. has beaten every single United Empire person he has faced up to this point. He's beaten Carl Fletcher, he's beaten Mark Davis, he's beaten Aaron Henare, and he's beaten their leader, Will Ospreay. A lot of different things going on here. What can we see in this main event, Andy?
Well, it's an intriguing heavyweight contest. It's going to be, I think, a bit of a throwback. You know, two true heavyweights and two true heavy hitters. Like you say, Great-O-Khan, he went on a reign of terror in Revolution Pro Wrestling alongside Gideon Gray. Undefeated, defeating everyone in his path. And Ricky Knight Jr. felt the power of the Great-O-Khan firsthand at Royal Quest when Great-O-Khan was able to defeat RKJ and really shock RKJ, because I don't really feel that. I think that RKJ, after that contest with Will Ospreay especially, was feeling pretty unbeatable. You know, I feel like I don't think for a second he thought he was going to be put down by the great O'Khan. And it's quite a humbling experience when that happens, you know, when you're riding that high and that momentum and all of a sudden you get derailed. So now Ricky Knight Jr. knows what to expect when he's in the ring with O'Khan. I mean, we can't forget the unknown quantity of Gideon Grey. He definitely brings something to the table. But I feel that Great O'Khan he's such a tough person to compete against because stylistically he's unlike anything we've ever seen. I mean, he's got amateur wrestling roots, in which his mat-based wrestling is second to none. I'm not even sure if anyone is totally aware of the Great O'Khan's credentials when it comes to being able to take it to the mat. He targets part of the bodies you can't train. So like you'll see him go for the nose, the ears, the eyes, parts of the body you can't train. In every other part of the body you can train. You know, you can make it stronger, but not your ears, not your nose, you know. Which is interesting because that's something that we've seen Ricky Knight Jr. do in the past. We've seen him, you know, grab someone's nose or, you know, fish hook the mouth. Tactics we've seen Great O'Khan use as well. So, you know, it's going to be interesting in that respect. Ricky Knight Jr. is used to being in fights. He's not going to be intimidated. Don't get me wrong. Not for 1 second do I think he's going to be intimidated, but he's got a pressure, you know, perhaps a whole nother level of pressure on his shoulders that he's never felt before. You know, you heard Will Ospreay say, I think it was ahead of his match with Michael Oku. He said, "I'm tired." You know, Will Ospreay felt the pressure of carrying the undisputed British Heavyweight Championship and carrying Revolution Pro Wrestling on his back. And that pressure, that responsibility, that show closing responsibility is now down to Ricky Knight Jr. And that's going to, in and of itself, bring a huge amount of pressure, let alone the fact he's fighting against someone who is a puzzle which no one's been able to solve as of yet.
I think what makes this one a little bit different is a lot of the other matches, we're kind of seeing the build week in, week out. We're seeing that rivalry more. These two men haven't actually seen or been in the same room since Royal Quest. It's kind of been a little bubbling thing. So like you said, this past Sunday, we saw Ricky start to go for eyes. We saw him sort of employ some of those tactics that Great O'Khan might have used. We saw him use the Oz Cutter. We've seen him start to use moves from United Empire members that he's beaten. He's training away in the background. He's had this rivalry sort of going with Zack Knight a little bit. Well, not a rivalry as such, but, you know, a sort of fight going on. But he's still got his eye on the ball with the Great O'Khan. And also on the flip side, Gideon Grey has been using his Legion sort of roots as well as the United Empire. They've been very successful over in Japan. However, we have seen the Legion sort of foiling Ricky Knight Jr. in the last few shows. So you've got to be thinking these game plans are sort of bubbling away behind the corner, and it's going to be very interesting to see what we actually see on December 17th.
Yeah, absolutely. And Great O'Khan very proud of his Legion roots. And, you know, I think that there's been work going on behind the scenes, as you say. The Legion have been targeting Ricky Knight Jr. And, you know, it's impossible to go into those physical encounters week in, week out, and not be feeling some of the effects, feeling the battle wounds, you know. And I think what would be interesting, you know, that they're all reporting back to Gideon Grey, who's then in return reporting back to the Great O'Khan. You know, they're developing a game plan based upon those contests, based around those attacks, those assaults, those beatdowns, etc. And you know they would have been licking their lips watching Ricky Knight Jr. and Zack Knight, you know, kick 7 shades of you know what out of each other this past week. You know they would have been loving that, and you know that they, you know, no one prepares. You know, you can say what you like about Gideon Grey, and trust me, I do, but no one strategizes and prepares for professional wrestling contests and gets their men, you know, prepared for those contests quite like Gideon. And yeah, look, Gideon Grey said it himself in that video when he introduced Nathan Cruz to the Legion, in that video in Stevenage. You know, Gideon Grey said it himself, you know, like, oh, if you think this is all about us softening you up before the Great O'Khan, you're right. You know, he's made no secret of that fact. And like I say, you know, well, like you said, really, like, you know, it is very intriguing in the sense of the last time, unlike any other contest that we've got on this night, you know, apart from perhaps Zack Knight and Tomohiro Ishii, the last time, well, look, now I'm proving myself wrong. So we've got Sabre Jr. They've never even been in the same room as each other, let alone the same ring, right? But you know, in contrast to many of the other contests where we've seen them touch, so to speak, you know, we've seen them face to face, we've seen them interact with one another on a week in, week out basis. The last time they were in the ring against each other was at Royal Quest, and Great-O-Khan left with a cracked rib, and Ricky Knight Jr. left with his pride down the drain, so to speak. You know, he couldn't believe on that stage he was outshone by the undefeated Great-O-Khan. But yeah, something's got to give. You know, we're either the undefeated streak's going to be over, or we're going to see a new undisputed British heavyweight champion. History is going to be made one way or another on Saturday, December the 17th.
I think, like you said, Gideon Gray is going to be a big factor here. I know we rib on him a lot. I know we joke about him a lot, but he is going to be in the Great-O-Khan's corner, and he is going to have a plan. If that plan fails, he is going to have another plan. I don't know how you count out the Great-O-Khan at this point. It just seemed foolproof going into it. But, you know, we've counted Ricky Knight out before. No one thought that Will Ospreay was going to be defeated, and he did it at York Hall. He might end the year like he'd begun it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I can, you know, look, I'm not taking anything or any possible scenario off the table. I think that ultimately, look, they've got a 60-minute time limit to work in. And you know, at the end of the day, best man's going to win, and I hope it is down to just that, you know, whoever comes up with the best game plan and strategy on the night. Because I think both men, I think when you look at their credentials, they're pretty, you know, again, they have certain attributes where they trump the other if we're playing a game of top trumps, but ultimately they're pretty even, and that's what it should be all about when you talk about you know, the top line heavyweight action in Revolution Pro Wrestling. It's the best in the world, and when you look at Great-O-Khan, you look at Ricky Knight Jr., you're talking about two of the absolute best in the world.
Absolutely. I think we've got an incredible main event there. I think we've got an incredible show coming forward. Is there any particular match you're really looking forward to? Any
listen,
pick?
the whole thing, you know, I need to see what happens when Mike Loku and Connor Mills compete against one another. But I'm so excited to see Alex Windsor and Kanji, you know, and, you know, that something's got to give nature of that main event. Will Zack Knight step up against Tomohiro Ishii? Zack Sabre Jr. and Leon Slater is perhaps the most intriguing contest that we've put together in a very, very long time. It's a complete unknown quantity as to what we're going to get. And I think it's going to be a real sign as to where Leon Slater's at in the wrestling world. And there's, of course, that pure animosity and tension in the undisputed British Tag Team Championships, at Street Fight. Again, the Cruiserweight Championship, absolutely unpredictable, but I think the elimination nature of that contest makes it even more exciting. So, like I say, every single contest has something to offer. Every single match offers something different. It's a diversity in professional wrestling, and it's something that really you have to see live. It's great watching it on demand. It's great listening to us. I'm sure people are like, it's great listening to you, but not so much me. But I get excited. But it's great watching it on demand, but I'm telling you, there's nothing like watching it live. And I implore anyone who can get there to come there live on December 17th, revolutionprowrestling.com for tickets. Yeah, just come and check it out. Be a part of the show, because when you're at these shows, it's so, you know, it's so intimate. And the atmosphere is like nothing else, and you really do feel like you're a part of a show. You don't feel like you're a spectator on the outside looking in. You really feel like you're up close, you're personal, and there's no better venue than York Hall, Bethnal Green, in terms of delivering that big fight atmosphere and that feeling and that electricity. And again, I'm saying all this stuff, if you haven't been, you probably can't comprehend it, but if you've been, I'm sure you can, because it's special. There's magic in the air, and on December 17th at Uprising, there's going to be magic in the air again.
Absolutely. It's an incredible way to end the year. And like you said, this is going to signpost everything coming into 2023. So there's no better time to come to a show than December 17th, Bethnal Green, York Hall, RevPro Uprising 2022. Thank you so much for your time today, Andy.
Thank you.